The ground in General Santos is still moving. 4 days after a magnitude 7.8 earthquake tore through Mindanao and killed dozens of people, the aftershocks have not stopped. Not even close. The strongest follow-up, a magnitude 6.5, arrived with enough force to send rescue workers stumbling backward from unstable rubble piles, waiting for the earth to settle before stepping forward again to keep digging. And then came another, and another. At last count, more than 200 aftershocks have shaken the region since that Monday morning when the Cotabato Trench snapped and sent $2 billion worth of homes, schools, and buildings crumbling into dust. The tsunami warning is gone. The crisis is not. And here is the part nobody is saying loudly enough. The same underwater fault that shattered the lives of thousands of people across Mindanao has not finished moving. The Cotabato Trench, one of the most dangerous sections of ocean floor on the planet, is resettling, grinding, adjusting. The cities packed along its coastline are holding their breath, waiting to find out whether the worst is already behind them, or whether the worst is still building pressure in the dark water offshore. Because the Cotabato Trench has done this before, it has killed thousands before, and every geologist who studies it agrees on one thing: it will do it again. To understand why the aftershocks matter, you have to understand what actually happened at 7:37 in the morning on June 8th, 2026. 20 kilometers off the coast of Sarangani province, beneath water that looked completely calm from the surface, a slab of ocean floor that had been locked under enormous stress for years suddenly gave way. The United States Geological Survey registered the event at magnitude 7.8, a number that almost guarantees the shaking will not stay local and will not end with a single event. In General Santos, a city of 720,000 people, the shaking arrived within seconds, and it did not feel like the tremors people were used to. Windows did not just rattle, they shattered. Walls did not crack, they collapsed. A 4-story commercial building with a busy grocery store on its ground floor pancaked into rubble in the time it takes to read this sentence. People who had come to buy food for the week were suddenly buried in darkness and dust, listening to steel groan and concrete break around them. 60 kilometers away, an entire mountainside gave way in Glan, burying homes under mud and shattered timber. In Malita, more than 100 students had gathered in their school courtyard for the first flag-raising ceremony of the new school year, first day back after 2 months off. The ground began to shake while they stood in formation. Teachers held their nerve, kept students still, kept them from running into each other or into falling debris. That single act of discipline is part of why none of them were seriously hurt. The official death toll climbed past 40. More than 450 people were injured. Nearly 2,000 homes were damaged or destroyed across the region. Government buildings, hospitals, schools, all of it shaken to varying degrees by a fault that most people in the region had heard about in theory, but never truly felt until now. Even hospitals were not spared. At one medical facility, the main building was deemed structurally unsafe to enter within hours of the earthquake. Doctors and nurses had a choice: stop treating patients or improvise. They chose to improvise. They moved their patients outside, set up tents in the parking lot under direct sun, and continued working as aftershocks rolled through the ground beneath their feet. In one of those tents, a woman gave birth, a new baby arriving into a world that was still physically shaking beneath her. That is the kind of detail that does not fit in a damage assessment report, but captures what this disaster actually cost the people living inside it. The tsunami arrived at roughly 1 meter, not 9 meters, the height of the wave that swept across 700 kilometers of Mindanao coastline in 1976 and killed thousands of people in their sleep. 1 meter, which means the cities along this coast got a reminder, a shot across the bow. And the question that hangs over everything now, as the aftershocks continue rolling through the region and the Cotabato Trench continues to settle, is what they do with it. Not all earthquakes are the same. Not all magnitude 7.8 earthquakes cause the same damage, the same tsunami, or the same sequence of aftershocks. What happened on June 8th was shaped by a single detail that determined life and death for thousands of people, a detail that nobody on the surface could see or influence. The Cotabato Trench runs along the southwestern edge of Mindanao, just offshore. It is a subduction zone, a place where one plate of the Earth's crust is being forced downward beneath another. This is not a smooth or gradual process. The plates grind together, lock under enormous pressure, bend and accumulate stress over decades, sometimes over centuries, until the buildup of energy finds no other direction to go. Then they snap. On June 8th, the rupture began approximately 30 kilometers below the ocean floor. That depth is the key variable. When an earthquake breaks deeper inside the slab, the seafloor above it does not lift as dramatically as it does when the break is shallower. Less upward movement means less water displaced from above. Less displaced water means a smaller wave. The 1-meter tsunami that reached the shorelines of Mindanao, Sulu, and Palau was not a miracle of engineering or a success of warning systems. It was geometry. The angle and the depth of the crack decided the size of the wave. Had the rupture occurred 10 to 15 kilometers shallower, at the same magnitude, the same location, the same force, coastal communities would have had minutes to escape a wall of water 3 stories high, or they would not have escaped at all. FIVOLCS Director Teresito Bacolcol confirmed publicly that the June 8th event was the strongest earthquake to strike the Philippines in 2026, and among the most powerful since the 1976 disaster. The rupture released energy across a vast stretch of the trench, energy that will continue to redistribute through the surrounding rock in the form of aftershocks for weeks, possibly months ahead. The magnitude 6.5 aftershock that struck within hours of the main event was not just a nervous tremor. It was the fault system finding a new equilibrium. And that process is not finished yet. Imagine a stack of heavy books that someone just shoved hard to one side. The books do not fall in one smooth, controlled motion. They shift, wobble, and slide at different rates. Some settle quickly, others take extra seconds. And after they appear to have stopped, one more shifts slightly, then another. That is not a perfect analogy for what is happening beneath Mindanao right now. But it is closer than most people realize. When a major fault ruptures, it does not release all of its stored energy in the main event. The surrounding rock, compressed, bent, and stressed by the same tectonic forces that caused the original break, must redistribute that load. Some sections of the fault that were locked before the main quake are now more likely to slip. Other sections that absorbed stress from the adjacent break experience sudden changes in the forces acting on them. This rebalancing process produces aftershocks. After a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, a well-established pattern in seismology, the Omori-Utsu law, predicts that aftershock frequency will decrease over time following a specific mathematical curve. But decrease over time does not mean stop immediately. A magnitude 7.8 can produce significant, damaging aftershocks for weeks or even months. The magnitude 6.5 that shook the region within hours of the June 8th main event is consistent with expectations. So is every smaller jolt that has kept rescue workers pausing, cracked ceilings dusting, and families lying awake since. For the people sleeping in tents and parking lots across Mindanao, that scientific context provides limited comfort. Each new tremor, no matter how small it reads on a seismograph in Manila, sends dust drifting down from cracked ceilings and asks the same silent question. Is this just the fault settling, or is this the beginning of something bigger? The honest scientific answer is that it is almost certainly the former. The honest human answer is that it does not feel that way when you are on a cot at 3 a.m. listening to the ground shift beneath you and wondering whether the walls above your family will hold through the next one. August 16, 1976. Most of the Mindanao coastline was asleep. It was just after midnight when the Cotabato Trench broke. Not at 30 kilometers depth, closer to the surface. Close enough that the seafloor heaved upward and shoved an enormous column of seawater skyward, sending it toward shore in minutes. The people who survived what came next described a sound unlike anything they had heard before. Not thunder, not wind, something lower and more continuous, like the entire ocean rearranging itself. Then they saw the water pulling back from the shore. Then they ran. The wave was 9 meters at its peak, 3 stories high, moving fast enough that anyone caught in its path had seconds to understand what was happening. It swept across more than 700 kilometers of coastline in a single event. Entire villages were erased, not damaged, not flooded, but erased, their structures and people carried inland and deposited in pieces across terrain that hours earlier had been dry land. The death toll varies across historical records, with estimates ranging from 5,000 to 8,000 people killed in one night. The overwhelming majority were killed not by the earthquake itself, but by the water that followed it. The 1976 Moro Gulf disaster remains one of the deadliest tsunamis in Philippine history. Now consider what has changed since then. General Santos was a fraction of its current size. The coastal towns lining Sarangani Bay were smaller, less developed, and in a grim kind of irony, less exposed, because there was simply less there to be hit. Today, General Santos is a city of 720,000 people. The malls, subdivisions, high-rise condominiums, schools, hospitals, and commercial districts that now line that coastline were not there in 1976. The population that would need to evacuate in 2 to 5 minutes is dramatically larger. And the Cotabato Trench has not moved a kilometer from where it was the night the 9-meter wave came ashore. It sits exactly where it has always been. The cities above it have only grown toward it. Numbers and measurements alone do not crush people. Buildings do. In General Santos, the 4-story commercial structure with a grocery store on the ground floor became the face of this disaster. But that building was not unusual. It was ordinary, the kind of structure that exists in every mid-sized Philippine city, built in an era of different seismic standards, or inconsistently enforced ones, or ones simply not written for buildings of that height and occupancy load. The people inside it on June 8th had no warning, no time to process what was coming. The floor they were standing on became the ceiling they were buried under in the time it took the shockwave to travel from ocean floor to surface. Rescue crews worked through heat and aftershocks, cutting steel, listening for heartbeats in the rubble, pulling 2 people out alive and recovering others who did not make it. One mother, Deslinda Duvio, stood at the edge of the debris pile for days. Her son was somewhere inside. She told reporters it was painful to accept, as a mother, that he was in there, that all she wanted now was for him to be brought out so the family could at least be together, even in grief. That is what a 7.8 earthquake sounds like when you strip away the seismic charts and the USGS readings. 44-year-old Jojo Calma was driving when the building came down in front of him. He had lived with earthquakes his entire life. But this one, he said, was the first time the shaking was so strong he could not stop himself from crying. In those few seconds between the first tremor and the wave of dust, his only thought was whether he would make it home to his children. Across the region, approximately 6,000 school buildings sat empty and uninspected after the quake. Each structure had to be assessed wall by wall, column by column, floor by floor before students could return. every hairline crack left unrepaired is a future failure waiting for the next event. And in a region sitting above one of the most active subduction zones on Earth, the next event is not a hypothetical. The cities along the Cotabato Trench are not small towns on the edge of nowhere. They are dense, growing urban centers, commercial hubs with markets, ports, and schools built close to the coastline that makes this region economically vital and geologically exposed. General Santos is one of the fastest growing cities in Mindanao. Its tuna industry feeds supply chains across Asia. Its downtown area has added malls, high-rise condominiums, and a central business district in recent years. It sits roughly 20 to 30 kilometers from the trench. When the fault sends energy upward, General Santos gets almost no buffer. There is no wide stretch of open ocean between the rupture zone and the beach. The wave does not have to cross the Pacific. It crosses a narrow coastal margin. Sarangani Province, the quieter agricultural and fishing communities lining the bay south of General Santos, is even more exposed. Many of its barangays sit at or near sea level, with limited elevated ground nearby and road networks that cannot support a mass evacuation under any compressed timeline. And compressed timeline is the problem at the center of everything. The estimated window between a shallow Cotabato Trench rupture and the arrival of a tsunami at these coastlines is 2 to 5 minutes. That is not a workable evacuation window for a region where families sleep in single-story homes close to the water, where cell coverage can be spotty, and where the nearest elevated ground requires navigating through streets and traffic. VIVOLCS issued alerts within minutes of the June 8th rupture. Text messages went out. Sirens sounded in some areas. Because the rupture was deep, the wave was small, and the alerts had time to reach people before anything catastrophic arrived at the shore. But a deep rupture at 7.8 is survivable at 1 meter. A shallow rupture at 7.8 is not survivable for most of the people who would need to outrun it in 2 minutes. The cities are holding their breath because they understand, now in a way they did not before June 8th, that what they just survived was not the worst version of what this fault can do. 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, you can finish a short phone call. Walk half a block at a brisk pace. Make a decision about whether to grab your phone or your child first, and realize you cannot grab both. You cannot evacuate a coastal neighborhood of tens of thousands of people in 2 minutes. You cannot move traffic, gather children, assist elderly residents, and direct everyone to high ground in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, after a violent earthquake has already knocked objects off shelves and sent people diving for cover, the only people who stand a reasonable chance of reaching safety are the ones who already knew, without thinking, exactly where to run, and started running the moment the shaking stopped. That is the argument for community drills that go beyond ceremony. Survival muscle memory. The automatic, pre-installed response that when the ground shakes hard and you are near the coast, you do not wait for a confirmation. You do not check your phone for an alert. You do not debate with your family about whether this is the one. You move. You go inland or uphill the moment you can stand, because the alternative to having practiced that response is making the decision cold in a post-earthquake environment of noise and dust and panic, in a window that may already be closing. Community leaders across Sarangani and General Santos are now talking about regular timed drills, not yearly ceremonies where a siren sounds and people pause to acknowledge it, but actual timed exercises where residents move to designated safe zones and discover how long it actually takes. The answer, in every coastal community that has run real evacuation drills, is almost always longer than expected. The gap between longer than expected and 2 to 5 minutes is where the Cotabato Trench does its most efficient work. Coastal businesses face the same hard reckoning. Restaurants and resorts that built their appeal around ocean proximity are now in the path of every wave the trench can generate. Owners are being asked, by insurers, by municipal planners, by their own employees, whether there is a rooftop access point that remains unlocked, whether the staff know how to lead the evacuation rather than simply how to serve a table, whether the building itself can be reached from the street in 30 seconds when people are panicked and running in every direction. An ordinary morning service can become a race against a wall of water in under 5 minutes. In that race, every second counts, and every clear instruction matters. Somewhere off the coast of Sarangani, more than 30 kilometers below the surface of the Celebes Sea, the plates that snapped apart on June 8th are still moving. Not dramatically. Not in ways that anyone standing on the land above them can feel right now. But continuously, the way they have been moving for millions of years and will continue to move long after every city built on their surface has been shaken, rebuilt, and shaken again. The 1976 rupture did not drain the Cotabato Trench of its stored energy. The June 8th rupture did not either. Subduction zones do not work that way. They accumulate strain because the plates do not stop moving. The ocean floor is still being pulled downward. The upper plate is still being compressed. The lock is reforming slowly, at depth, in the dark water where no instrument on the surface can see exactly how much stress is building and exactly when it will reach the point of failure again. What happens between now and that moment is a set of choices the Philippines must make while the memory of this disaster is still fresh enough to demand action. Stronger building codes enforced rather than approved on paper. Seismic retrofitting of hospitals and schools near active faults. Zoning restrictions near shorelines that reflect what a 9-meter wave looks like, not what developers prefer to build. Evacuation routes that are marked, lit, and tested rather than simply drawn on a plan filed in an office. These are not abstract policy debates. They are the calculations that will determine how many people survive the next rupture at shallow depth, how many people will have high enough ground between themselves and the water to still be standing after the wave recedes. Aftershocks have not stopped. The community recovery will take months, possibly years. The families sleeping under tarps across Mindanao are still waiting to hear whether their homes are structurally safe to re-enter. Inspectors are still working through 6,000 school buildings, one structure at a time. A new baby was born in a hospital parking lot tent while aftershocks rolled through the ground beneath the delivery table. That image, a child born into the world while the earth underneath was still moving, is what life looks like on the edge of the Cotabato Trench right now. Ordinary, stubborn, frightened, still here. Because somewhere offshore, in the dark water beneath the Celebes Sea, the plates are already doing what they have always done. Locking, bending, storing strain with the patience of geological time. Waiting for the pressure to find no other direction to go. When that moment comes, and geologists are not in the business of saying if, only when, will the Philippines be ready and running for higher ground? Will the drills have been run enough times that people move without thinking, without waiting for a text message, without pausing to decide? Or will it still be standing at the edge of the water, holding its breath, waiting to find out how big the wave is this time?